Who's ready for Christmas? I mostly am, although tomorrow, Saturday, I will be spending a good chunk of the day baking cookies. Cookies that will be for some of them will be for me to take to work on Monday for my coworkers. Some of them will be cookies that will get taken to my dad's side of the family Christmas party. Some of them will be for us to have as dessert here on Christmas with my mom and my sibling, or my mom and my sister and her family and dad. Other ones will just be left here for my mom and I to eat our way through. Some of them will go to my dad. So lots and lots of cookies will be baked tomorrow, including peanut butter ones with no chocolate for the baby over here. So yeah, I'm mostly ready for Christmas, I think. I don't know. We'll see. We have the menu planned for Christmas Day, and then I don't know. I have Christmas stuff this weekend. I'm doing cookies tomorrow. I have a party to go to on Sunday, and then Tuesday is Christmas Eve, and I work, and then blah, 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 blah. But so this is chapter 1134, titled The Owl Library, which just sounds fun and sounds like something that would be like, I don't know, a task in a Harry Potter video game. Chase Hedwig through the library and get the letter from her, or chase the owls and get the letters from them, or something like that. I don't know. Sounds like something that would be applicable. In regards to the chapter, so we have the cover page spread, which is a big color cover page spread to kind of help finish off the year. I think there might be a chapter next week, but I'm not sure. I think there's supposed to be one that'll come out just before, like the week of Christmas, day or two after Christmas. We'll see. And then we'll go from there. And if so, then I'll get that reviewed before before the end of the year. So, this one, the color cover page spread, it is clearly a giant tribute to Frankie, which I love. So it's supposed to be, kind of a tribute to, it is just a straight up tribute to Kazuki Yao, who is the Japanese voice actor of Frankie. He just recently made the announcement that he would be retiring from being the voice actor for Frankie. He also voiced Django and Bon Clay, so he's been part of, the One Piece families, for a long time, for like 25 years, all the way back since Syrup Village and everything. And he is currently, as he says, stepping off the Sunny. And is going to be, taking some time. He's not necessarily retiring, but given some more recent pictures of him, it looks like they might be he might be in slightly poor health. So we'll see how that goes. I wish him a very good recovery. And then we'll get someone new to be voicing Frankie, which will be announced either soon or it has been. I'm not exactly sure. I don't think I heard that it was announced yet, but we'll be getting it soon. I think at the beginning of next year, maybe. And Brenda's just on the bed making noise. Yeah, you're making noise. What are you doing? You can see her tail over here. The cover page, which I really just like this cover page. This one's really fun. It is all of the Straw Hats on top of a giant mecha Frankie, which is just the whole joke of the fact that, like, Frankie is just turning into a bigger and bigger robot. So it's giant, like, mecha Frankie. And on his left shoulder of the robot, it says, "We are eternal." So that's nice. And then all of the Straw Hats kind of look like they're all just having fun in their fun outfits, and they all have water guns, which is just fun in and of itself because it's like, great. I love that. So there's a lot of things that kind of this cover page made me think of. So first of all, as someone who kind of had to start off with One Piece with the 4Kids dub, all of the water pistols make me think of all of the water gun edits that they had to do, where they would change all of the Marines' pistols into water guns, all of their guns into water guns. So there's that fun bit there that kind of made me think of. The other one that it made me think of is there is one of the One Piece openings. It is We Can. Part of that has results in the Straw Hats on the crew basically devolving into a water gun fight, which is just fun. And like that was just fun. It has all of like it's all the crew that's there at the time. Just they somehow end up with water guns, and then they're all just having a big water gun fight, which is fun. Although in this case, obviously, Jinbei has been added in because he was not part of the crew back when they did that one. So it's just like it's kind of like a callback to that too, but it's also just like a fun bit here where it's just like the Straw Hats having fun flying through the air with seagulls all around them, and they've got their water guns and everything, and you know they all look pretty good. And the Nami Luffy shipper in me is just like Nami is like right next to Luffy and she's like holding onto his leg. To be fair, Luffy looks like he's about to jump off of the Mecha Frankie's head. So, Luffy, please don't. I know that you can kind of fly in Gear 4th, and basically, I think he can fly in Gear 5th. I know that that's a thing you can do now, Luffy, but that doesn't mean you need to jump off the robot while it's in the sky, particularly if it is over, like, open ocean. And you will fall in, and you're a devil fruit user, and that's not good for you. But I really like this cover page. It's a really nice one. I kind of hope it gets adapted into, like, I don't know, something in one of the openings at some point in time, or something along those lines. One of the eye catches. That would be nice. So going from there into the chapter, we start off right where we left off with the last chapter with 1133. So we have it where, you know, Robin has been reunited with Saul and they've had their like emotional thing and like they've kind of calmed down now. So it's like they've kind of stopped crying. And Luffy and the other Straw Hats have made their way over, and Luffy is now, so the way that Luffy does this is he's like, "Old man Saul, I heard you helped one of our fledglings back in the day. I really appreciate it. We're in your debt. Allow me to introduce myself." And he's like, you know, posing with his hand up, and it's a reference to like Yakuza talk. And so it's like the editor's note is like he's using the Edo period Yakuza talk. The upward palm gestures are in kind of like an archaic greeting. I just like this mostly because like I've recorded both of the videos for the Yakuza for both Hirogoro and for the Yakuza in general in Wano for the other leaders. That one will be coming up next week. But so it's like I kind of talked about that. So it's like, and like, so Luffy is kind of imitating that. He's also kind of imitating Luffy Luffy is imitating Jinbei when Jinbei first showed up at Wano, just before the Battle of Onigashima when he arrived. And he does like the full introduction of himself and everything. So it's kind of like Luffy's like kind of mimicking Jinbei there. I kind of want to know if either Hirogoro or one of the other Yakuza taught Luffy this to try to be more respectful to Hirogoro. That would be funny. I mean, like, Hirogoro didn't mind, but the other four didn't like the way Luffy kept not being particularly respectful to Hirogoro. So I think that would be funny if they taught him that. And the Straw Hats are all just kind of like, who the heck taught him that routine? And I think it's either like Sanji or Zoro. I think it's Sanji that's saying it or something. And Luffy goes, "Nobody." It's like, really? And we cut and we see, like, you know, Robin is still standing on Saul's palm. And she's like, "This is Luffy." Just like pointing down at Luffy and all the others. And then we have like all the rest of the Straw Hats are behind Saul, or are standing there behind Luffy. As they're watching this, and Saul's just like, "There is she. I know the fella's world famous. But hey, looks like you found them after all, Robin." And she's like, "Yeah, just like you said, I actually found them. People willing to accept and protect someone like me. true friends. And this is, that callback to, and I've been saying this since we kind of found out that, Saul has, that Saul was alive and everything, it is that callback to that moment on O'Hara when he tells you, someday, the world is a lonely place, but no one was born into this world to be alone. And, someday you'll find friends who won't ever leave you. The ocean is vast, and someday you'll find friends who won't ever leave you, is I think how that phrasing gets used. And, so we have that here, and we have, it's this fulfillment of this promise that Saul made to Robin. And, I mean, like, that promise was, like, Robin realized that promise was fulfilled to a degree way back on Ennis Lobby when everything happened there, when she was captured, and, they fought their way all the way to Ennis Lobby and then through Ennis Lobby and everything, all to save her. And, they went against the world government for her and everything. And they would do all the same things for each other. And they've done it for other people, too, who are their friends. So it's not like, it's like Robin has now seen this. And now she gets the chance to tell Saul that. She's like, you were right. I did find these people that are willing to protect someone like me. These true friends. And then we have it, like, just like the end of the last chapter, where it's just like, all the, the 6 of them turn and are just like, we die for you. Is it like they're all thinking about Robin, and like it's Usopp, Chopper, Nami, Sanji, Frankie, and Brook are all just crying, and then like we don't see Jinbei or Zoro's faces, and Luffy's probably just smiling, and Jinbei and Zoro are probably smiling as well. To be fair, I mean, like, we've seen Jinbei cry in the series when everything happened with Fisher Tiger and his death, and with Otohime and her death and everything. And we've seen Zoro cry, mostly way back during the Baratie arc, when everything happened there, with his battle with Mihawk, and he lost, and of course in his flashback with Kuina. So it's like, we've seen them cry, and I went over this last time. But it's just, that's not something that they're as readily wanting to do. It's not that they can't cry, and not that they don't cry, and we've seen Luffy cry multiple times throughout the story and everything. So it's like, but for all the other Straw Hats, these are just these happy tears of just like, of course we'd do that for you, Robin, of course we would, we love you so much. And Luffy's like, hee hee hee, you betcha, in regards to, protecting Robin and everything, that of course they would. And so Saul keeps talking, and he's just like, it's good to meet Robin's friends. Seriously, you've done great making it all the way to Elbath. And sorry for spooking you earlier. Me and my assistant, Angie, were out here rehearsing that bit for a while. Okay, so it's basically confirmed here that it wasn't just Saul just randomly decided to do this and like didn't tell anybody. It's he told his assistants, and she was probably the one that we heard like shouting earlier on and at the end of one of the other chapters, where it's just like, oh, Professor Saul has fallen and he can't get up. So it's just a bit. He's like, I used to be a Marine, so I know how impressive it is to be recognized as an emperor. And he's like looking down at Luffy. And thank you so much for protecting Robin. Please keep it up. And Luffy's like, hee, no problem. And like, we're seeing the rest of the Straw Hats there, of course, all just looking up and smiling at them. And like, we do get confirmation right here with this pic that we do see both Lilith and Bonnie are there. Although I'm pretty sure we at least saw Bonnie on the boat last time. I don't know if we saw Lilith on the boat, on the little flaw, whatever it was called, on their way to go see Saul. So it's like we see the rest of the Straw Hats are there, and they're all smiling up at Saul, which is great. And then we have Lilith pops up, and she like hops up on the Dom shoes, the Dom boots. So they work here, and she's like, "Hey Saul, it's me," and she's pointing at herself, and Saul is just kind of has like a question mark on his like, "Huh?" And he goes, "Have we met? And how the heck are you flying?" And she goes like, "I'm Vegapunk." What? Because like, I don't think Saul was aware of the satellite setup, or at least not as aware as, maybe he became, as like other people who were around Vegapunk a lot more, obviously. Because like kind of probably the last time Saul and Vegapunk talked to each other is going to get referenced here in a second, but it was probably around 20 years ago when Vegapunk went to the library to read all of the books that were saved from Ohara, and we're going to show that in a second. So, and now we have it that Jinbei has hopped back on the sleigh thing, and the little boat thing, and he's like pulled this box out that has Vega written on it. It's got a big Vega sticker on it. And he's like, you sure you want it now? And Lilith's like, yeah, sorry for the trouble. And Gerd is just like, allow me. It's like, here, allow me. Because, like, Gerd could just pick this box up with one hand. Jinbei's strong. A bunch of the other Straw Hats are strong enough to lift this thing. But, you know, it's like Gerd would just be able to go, like, okay, here's your box. Just, like, so easily. And Jinbei's like, you asked me to bring it from Egghead. What's inside it, though? And Lilith smiles. She goes, inside? Why, it's one of me. And Luffy does kind of the Enel face of another Vegapunk, which is a fair thing to say because they just dealt with, you know, Stella Vegapunk and all 6 of the satellites, one of which was evil, several of which got destroyed and everything. So there's that. So Luffy's kind of doing a little bit of the Enel shocked face. And the other Straw Hats are kind of shocked by this too. And Lilith is explaining, yeah, but this clone's different from us satellites. It's a perfect copy. I used it to visit this island 20 years ago. So this kind of confirms that, you know, it's like we saw this in the flashback where, you know, Vegapunk had gone to Ohara 22 years ago when, just after everything had happened there with the Ohara incident, and when Saul was there with Hyrudian and his group, which we're going to learn a little bit more about in a little bit. And what happened was, you know, it gets pointed out here by Lilith that she's like, Stella couldn't exactly leave the lab for months at a time without those government dogs noticing, which is very fair. And it is kind of this whole thing where it's like, and that would have been like when they were probably based out of Punk Hazard at the time, because this would have been like way before Egghead was set up or even a thought necessarily. And it makes sense that like Egghead was really close to Elbath, as noted by, you know, last arc, this arc, and everything with how close Elbath and Egghead are. Whereas, you know, Punk Hazard is way at the beginning of the New World. So that would have been like a long trip for Vegapunk to go from Punk Hazard all the way to Elbath and back again several times without having anyone notice. And as much as we kind of have now seen a little bit of like what Kizaru's loyalty is and how much he does care about Vegapunk, I don't think Kizaru would have been willing to allow Vegapunk to travel to and from Elbath with his knowledge. So he probably would have had to have had, you know, Vegapunk had this other copy that is this perfect copy made of him that could go, well, the original Vegapunk, the original Stella, so this is like maybe Stella 2.5 or something like that. Not the same as the other Vegapunks, as the other clones, or as the other satellites, but a bit different. And she's like, you know, this is just a perfect copy. So that explains that. And they set it down on the ground, and Lilith is like, now then, let's stop dilly-dallying and get to it. I've already added the cultivation fluid, but we won't be able to do a safe extraction till I make the necessary equipment. That's why I intend to build a new lab right here. And so and this was kind of one of the thoughts that we had about Lilith, is that she was going to maybe see about setting up a new lab to continue Vegapunk's work here on have them set it up here, have herself build it up here on Egghead. Because I think she still has some connection to the other Vegapunks with, you know, the punk records and everything. So I think she still has some connection to them to a degree, but, you know, so we'll see how that goes. And then we have Bonnie there, and she's like, Lilith, all that, will that make it possible for you to help Papa too? And Lilith is like, that's the plan, Bonnie. So I love that there's that confirmation there that that Lilith has every intention of not just helping Vegapunk, because they still got his dead body sitting on the, possibly sitting on the Great Eric right now. And Kuma's body is sitting there too. Kuma might be technically a little bit more alive than Vegapunk is, but that's not saying much at the moment. So they might still give, like, Stella's original body kind of like a proper funeral and then have this new one type of a thing. But that would be a little weird, so I don't know exactly how they're going to figure that up, but they might do something with it. That'll be an interesting question to figure out. Because that would be the question of, like, well, could they destroy the original body? I mean, like, it doesn't necessarily have, like, the devil fruit power technically is null and void, but it's not because of the whole question of what constitutes being alive. So we'll see how that goes. And then, yeah, this just confirms that Lilith has every intention of helping Kuma and helping Bonnie and everything. And maybe she may not be able to, she probably can't, like, get Kuma back 100% to the way that he was, but at least giving it that he has more of a will and having that be connected to, like, his will and his innate, instincts to protect Bonnie and give him more of a possibility with that. Which I think it's not perfect and it's not a perfect solution, because unless they have some other way of copying the Paw Fruit's powers and getting that memory bubble back, which I don't think they... Okay. Bit of a twisted way of doing this, but it technically could apply. Bonnie has now seen everything in Kuma's memories because she saw the memory bubble, because she experienced it. And they still have Kuma, his body still has the Paw Fruit. So would there be a possibility where they could take a copy from, like, Bonnie's memories of Kuma, from Kuma, Bonnie's memories, that what she saw for witnessing Kuma's memories, have that, reject that out of her and copy it, and then put that into this new Kuma, or this, slightly fixed up version of Kuma. Could they do that? I mean, that was kind of one of the thoughts we had anyway for the memory bubble anyway, was being able to take those memories and put them maybe not into Kuma's original body, but into, like, S-Bear or something like that. That was one of the other theories that there was out there, that was something that could happen. So I guess that's a possibility, but we'll see what happens there. And Saul's like, if you really are Vegapunk, then I'm thrilled to see you after 20 years, but I don't get it. Why are you a woman? Fair question. Also, why are you younger? And Lilith is like, oh, there's a perfectly logical explanation. Yeah, said explanation is original Vegapunk, who had the brain fruit, cut his brain out of his own head and set it up in, like, something to keep it alive outside of his own body, and then connected his brain into 6 other satellites. Saul sitting there after that explanation. Okay. I guess to Vegapunk that seems perfectly logical. To me, not so much, but to you, sure. So that's a possibility there. That's that possibility. And then we cut to where we have a bunch of kids pop up and they're like, "Sir, are you done? Can we play now?" So they're just like, all really happy, which is cute. Sitting some other little giant children. I don't think we see Colin in this chapter at all. We see a bunch of other giant children, but not Colin. He's still making his way up from the bar. And Saul's like waving over. It's like, "My bad, kids. Come on out. Thanks for waiting." So I like this because it implies that it wasn't just him and Agni who were, kind of, playing this. That he kind of explained to the kids, like, "Okay, I'm not actually hurt. I'm doing this because," he like probably gave them like a bit of a description as to like, "I'm doing this so I can meet Robin again the same way that I met her the first time when she was a little kid." And they're like, "Okay, Professor Saul, that's fine. So you're not actually hurt though, right?" "No, I'm fine." "Okay, good." It was like, yeah, let's reassure all of the children. That's a good idea. And Agni, who is the other giant that we saw, the other giant with the glasses, and she's got like freckles on her teeth, that was wrong, on her cheeks, excuse me. She's like, those tykes use the spring area as a playground. We had them hold off so they wouldn't spoil Mr. Saul's performance. You went that far? It's like everybody's surprised by that. She's like, I apologize for the belated introduction. I'm Agni, an assistant teacher here. And she's, we get like a little title, librarian, Saul's assistant, Agni. And she's like, I don't mean to brag, but this is Elbath's #1 school and library. I mean, like, that is a valid thing to be proud of, to be like the #1 school and library in any country. That is a very valid thing to be proud of. And I know this. I've grown up around libraries my whole life. My mom works for the Nebraska Library Commission and has since I was like 2. And I am very proud of what that does. It helps with intercommunication between the other public libraries in Nebraska. So I approve of that. And I've done lots of volunteer hours there and everything. And we cut to the next page, which is like a double page thing. And Agni is just like, let me give you a tour of the premises. And they're like, woo! So they're all happy. And then we have Usopp and Luffy are just like running off. And they're like, that sounds fun. And she goes, not so fast. And Usopp's just like, I can't wait to see how Elbath raises its mighty warriors. And we cut to where we have this other... So we saw the... owl library in the last chapter that was like this, it's like, and these are like buildings and stuff that are hanging off of like the branches that jut up and out within the tree of Elbath itself, within the Atom tree itself. So it's like all, jutty and that stuff. So there's like other branches that come up, and then they have like the what I had been thinking of before was like they had said that the parts of the tree are so old that it's basically that parts of the tree have like petrified themselves. So some of the some parts of the tree where they had like that lake pond thing, spring of whatever it was, that Gerd was talking about last time when they were showing up at the library. That area is probably like those trees that are on the bottom have but that they're so old that they've like petrified, and then they get like worn away and turned into like sand. So that's why you have like the beach there. And then like there's other trees that maybe like grow out of that soil, and stuff. And so one of those things that we see is like this another treehouse setup that is supposed to be a school. And it's called, this is the Walrus Folk School. So it's just named after a walrus. And I love that, like, the symbol is a walrus head, and it has like a little graduation cap on it, which is adorable. And like, this is this is like another like treehouse type of a thing. It looks really freaking cool. And they're showing up, and the straw, like all the Straw Hats are like looking up at it, which is great. As they're just like really excited about this, and like Luffy and Usopp are just like woohoo as they're running around, and they're like it's getting an explanation of Mr. Saul opened it 20 years ago at our late king's request. We're gonna get a lot about King Harold in this chapter in regards to some of his views, so I'll go over those as we go. And it's like They're just so happy. This is going to be a blast. It's a training school for young warriors, right? That's probably Usopp. And we see like some of the other kids like playing in like the little pond area out there. And Saul, we cut over and we see Saul waving at Gerd and Agni. And he's like, Gerd, Agni, you go on and show them around the school and everything. And then he's like, I'm going to take Robin straight to the library. So they're kind of splitting up. He's going to go take Robin to the library. I think Lilith and Bonnie are going to go with them, along with like the Vegapunk thing are going to go with them. And then the rest of the Straw Hats are going to follow Luffy and Usopp where they just went to go and see the school, is what I believe is going to happen here. And they're like, are you coming, Chopper? And he's like, I want to check out the library too. I bet the books are massive. Yes, they are, Chopper. Oh, yes, they are. So the Chopper's going to head off to the library, which is fair. And Nami's pointing, there was Nami that asked Chopper that, and then Brooke is just like, schools always make me nostalgic, as we see Brooke saying that. And I'm like, schools always make you nostalgic. Did you really enjoy being in school, Brooke? What if one of Brooke's parents was a teacher? That would make sense for like why Brooke would think this, the school was nostalgic if his parents were teachers, or one of them was a teacher of some kind. Maybe Brooke spent a lot of time at one of the schools on the island in the West Blue where he grew up. Maybe that's a thing. I don't know. And Sanji is just like, I'll tag along and keep you safe, Nami-chan. Keep you safe, Nami-san. And then Frankie's just like, I'm not interested in that giant tree. And Jinbei's like, yeah, that's huge. No, excuse me. Frankie's like, I'm more interested in that giant tree. Excuse me. It's like, you are literally on a giant tree right now, Frankie. And then we have Usopp, Luffy, and then Zoro has somehow caught up with them. They are running and they are being chased by a couple of the giant children. And they're just, one of them is just like, let's catch these shorties and play prisoners. Which is, I think, the very twisted game Road was playing with them at the beginning of the arc. And then Luffy's, man, this country really is a country of giants. And Luffy's just enjoying this so much. Zoro's just looking up and was like, should I cut them? And Usopp is like, no, you idiot. These giants are just kids. Be mature. Be the mature one. Zoro's answer is like, should I cut them? Usopp, no, these are children. We do not attack children. Unless you're Luffy and you're wrestling with Momo. That's different. And then we have these other three. So it looked like the ones that are chasing Luffy, Usopp, and Zoro, they look like to be the boys. And then we have these like three little girl giants pop up, and they're like, stop that! You know we're not allowed to harm cute humans. So what do you do if ugly ones show up? But it might be like their opinion might just be all humans are cute because that's what Gerd tells them or something like that. So what are you going to do if an ugly human shows up? Like, what would you do if Orochi showed up? Would you find him cute or would you punt him to the moon? Because that would be hilarious to just see like a giant child just like look at Orochi, go, ew, it's gross, and then like punt him. And just see Orochi just go flying. So the three girls just, stand up to the boys, and the boys just go, sorry. And Luffy and Usopp are just like, they're so lame in regards to the boys because they were so easily just like, admonished by the girls. And the girls are just like, and don't call them shorties either. And Zoro is just like, and are these brats really Elbath's future warriors? And one of the other kids who kind of has like a similar glasses mask thing to like what Zoro has is just like, hey, watch it. You can't just say words like brat anymore. Is that a cancel culture joke Oda's making? I don't know. But we had Brat Summer here, so I don't know, and I never understood what Brat Summer meant. Anyway, I'm old. Okay, I'm 32. I'm not really old, but you get the idea. And then Usopp is just like, this is surreal. We weren't even weren't even offended by that Jordy's comment. It's just like, and aren't you guys meant to be wild fighters willing to pillage and burn the seas themselves? Okay. This is where we're going to get into a little bit of, I think, culture shock for some of the Straw Hats, particularly for like Usopp and Luffy. We're going to get into a little bit of culture shock, and I think a little bit of like conflating stuff that they have heard when it comes to stuff that like Dorian Bragi have said, stuff that like Gorimo and Kashi have said, along with stuff about like Hybridine and his group, but along with also like a lot of the rumors and like the negative propaganda and everything else like that the world government has done in regards to how they portray the giants, with them being ruthless and pillaging and horrible and everything else like that they're just like pirates except worse because they're huge and all they do is care about war and everything. And yeah, Elbath is like the warland Elbath, the country of Elbath and everything, warland and everything else like that. That's part of its title, but that doesn't mean that everybody there is violent. And that's kind of one of the things that is a bit like, not everybody on Elbath is going to be violent all the time. That doesn't mean that everybody on Elbath always wants to go to war. It means that, because it's like, okay, let's put it this way. A lot of the giants that we have interacted with over the years, Dorian Bragi, Oimokashi, Hyrudine and his crew, minus Road, and even Yorl and Jarl, back during Big Mom's flashback, a lot of the ones that we have interacted with do have that warrior mentality. That's the majority of the ones that we've interacted with. For the ones that are from Elbath. Saul is not from Elbath, so there's a difference there. But, and there's been a few other, like, non-canon giants. I know that for the non-canon stuff, that, like, both Lillian Stombik and her father, Pans Fry, that they were from Elbath. And there's been, like, a few other, like, you know, a few other giants that the Straw Hats have interacted with that were from Elbath. And then others that weren't and everything. But think about it this way. All of those giants that we've mostly interacted with that come from Elbath, yes, they are warriors. But that doesn't mean that they necessarily want to fight all of the time. Because, okay, they're not Klingons. And even the Klingons understood the concept that there are times when fighting is not the answer. Where, you know, certain things will happen. You know, sometimes, you know, diplomacy is a much better option, depending on the circumstances. Dorian Bragi were fine with doing their contest for, you know, fighting for 100, you know, ended up being for 100 years on Little Garden and everything. You know, that's one thing that they were okay with, but then there's, like, other stuff where they're just like, yeah, no, that's not really a good reason to fight, type of a thing. And then, you know, there's all types of stuff about honor and everything, and there's a difference between, like, honorable fighting and then just fighting to cause, you know, damage and pillage and everything else like that. Now, a lot of the times when it comes to our history, when it comes to Vikings and Norsemen and stuff like that, which are what the you know, Elbath is kind of based on, a lot of that time, you know, like, those, you know, the Vikings and stuff like that would go and raid ports, but it was mostly because they were running out of food at home, so they had to go and do that to get food for themselves and for their people. And at times when stuff was better at home, they wouldn't do all of the raiding and everything else like that. Some would still do it because they just enjoyed doing it. Other ones who are kind of the more honorable side of things wouldn't do it unless it was necessary. So there is a bit of that. And yes, there's lots of stuff about, like, the Vikings raiding monasteries and stuff like that. But, and, you know, sometimes that was taking the gold or whatever. Because then they could use it to help themselves get more food and everything else like that. So there's, you know, lots of stuff like that in the history of our own world. So, now we're cut to where the kids are talking, and, like, we have Usopp and Luffy and Zoro are standing here talking to the kids. And one of the kids is like, fighters? No way. That's dangerous. And then Usopp is going, huh? But you bastards are the next generation of Elbath warriors, right? First of all, maybe don't call the little kids bastards, Usopp. Maybe don't do that. That may not be your brightest moment. And one of the kids is like, you can't say bastard either, which is funny. And they're just like, come on. And one of the last little girl is just like, words like that are old-fashioned. And Luffy is just like confused. Someone says, words like that are old-fashioned. And Zoro's like, hey, that was an adult just now. And Usopp is just like, old-fashioned? What's that meant to mean? And one of the kids are just like, you should probably move. Yeah, you're gonna get told off. You're standing on Miss Ripley. And they look down, and we get, like, the downward panel shot. And there is a giant female, you know, a female giant laying on the ground. Luffy is sitting right here on her chest. Usopp is standing on her stomach. Zoro is standing next to her by her stomach. And she is the very classic Oda drawn, very beautiful figure. Agni didn't quite, isn't quite that type, but I would still find that she's cute. Right, Ripley here is like the one that got mentioned earlier by the barmaid, by Colin's like mom or whatever she is. When he left, it's like, take this to, Riley. It's her favorite. This is Riley's favorite and everything. So we're meeting Ripley. So we've got Ripley here, and it was like, you're standing on Miss Ripley. And it's like, Luffy, I think it's just, we claimed that it's giant. Our bad. And she's like, nah, no worries. You're feather light. Anyway, I bet this is a culture shock to you, but all those legends of fearsome giant pirates are from 100 years ago, And again, this is calling back to Dorian Broggy's time, when they were the leaders of the giant warrior pirates, and even going back further than that and everything like that. But it's been 100 years since then. And, like, even, it's like Hyrule kind of has a bit of that, like, honorable stuff in him, too. But it's maybe not something that he went after as much as, like, they went after. But it's also, I don't know. To be fair, I would say if Hyrule tried to fight against Dory and Broggy, or either of them, I think Dory or Broggy would probably win against Hyrule. Mostly because, like, they've been training for, like, 100 years straight. Plus, they have a lot more experience in general than him, and now that they have like their actual weapons, restored and everything like that, they have their weapons again. So it would make sense, like if Dory or Broggy had to fight Hyrule, that one of them would win as opposed to Hyrule. Not that Hyrule is weak by any standard, and hopefully he's gotten stronger since Luffy and him fought at Dressrosa and everything, and since he fought Magnify at Dressrosa, hopefully he's gotten stronger since then. But, it is kind of this concept where it's like, yeah, kind of the picture that we've had painted for us of Elbath is like of these fearsome giant pirates from 100 years ago. And things have changed since then. Just like what happens in every country over the course of 100 years. I mean, look at everything that happened during the life of Queen Elizabeth. She reigned for so long, and she, was alive for so long, and everything, that so much changed just within her lifetime. Things were so different, but from when she took the throne all the way up to when she, died, that, a lot of that changes. And even the same thing happens here. Like, Jimmy Carter, former President Jimmy Carter, just turned 100 years old a couple of weeks ago, just before the election. Oh, God. And, I don't want to think about the election. But he turned 100, 100. And, think about everything that has changed in his life. All of that. So it's just like so much of that. Like my grandfather is like 94 years old, and there's been so much that has changed within his life in general, in the world. All of the advancements and everything else that have been made, not just with science and technology, but just, the way that, the world works and everything. Think about how many countries have been made or, fallen to ruin just within that time frame that my grandfather has been alive. There's probably been several that have, that happened in that time frame. So there's stuff there. So it's like Ripley is trying to explain this to them, and we get like the little title called for her, and it's like Walrus Folk School Biology Teacher Ripley. So, yeah, there's going to be the references here to possibly Ripley as in from, like, Alien Ripley, as in Sigourney Weaver's character Ellen Ripley. And, fun fact, when I was looking this up, the character's daughter's name in Alien is Amanda, which made me happy. So, that made me very happy. So, we're kind of getting this introduction to Ripley, and she kind of sits up a little bit, and Luffy falls, and he falls in her cleavage, which is something Sanji would just be like, oh God, so happy about. And she keeps talking. She's like, foul mouse, aggression, plundering, war, those are relics of a bygone era now. And Luffy's just like, what? Because Luffy is so, befuddled by this, because this is not something that he's familiar with, because like everything that they've heard, from giants about Elbath and everything is that it's, Elbath and fighting and these brave warriors and everything. It's not saying that these children can't grow up and become brave warriors. It's just that they're more interested in knowledge and the power that knowledge can bring than what just, wielding an axe or a sword or a bow and arrow could do. Not that those are bad things, but this is just something else that they're more interested in than the other thing. And we're going to find out a little bit more about that in a moment. And so Ripley keeps going. She's like, welcome to Elbaf, Straw Hats. I heard about you from Saul. And Agni shows up and she's like, there you are, Luffy. And like Luffy and Usopp and Zoro's still on the ground. So Luffy and Usopp are sitting in Ripley's palm as she's like leaning back against part of the tree talking to them with the kids around her. And Agni's run up and she's like, sorry about our loudmouth brats. and it's just like, didn't you just say words like that were behind the times? It's like, yeah, miss, you're so naughty. So it's just like the kids are just like, oh, you're not supposed to do that. Ha ha, you said a bad word. And then Ripley's just like, do as I say, not as I do. And they're just like, grr. So it's just like, yeah, do as I say, not as I do. Because like, and Ripley's going to say here, and she's like, seek to trade with other nations, not wage war. Our beloved late King Harold said those wise words. He often clashed with the graybeards of the villages. And she's like holding up Luffy and Usopp, raising them into the air as she's saying this. And Luffy's just kind of standing there like, Like Luffy's not the happiest about this because he was still ready for like giants and fighting and warriors and everything. And Usopp's still a little bit like, what's going on here? And so it's like, this is a reference to King Harold. We've, just learned about him just at the beginning of the arc when it came to like, he is both Loki and Hyrudine's father. We don't know exactly the whole circumstances there, but he is their father. And Usopp's like, King Harold? And Agni goes, a visionary of a king who wanted to revolutionize our country. He was slain by his actual flesh and blood, that crazy prince. The country still refuses to acknowledge his claim to the throne. That's why Elbaf doesn't currently have a sovereign. So that was one of the questions that was going on in regards to like what's going on with the leadership of Elbaf right now. And that kind of might pay credence to the whole fact of I made the comment that like Hyrudine may not be like a prince of the blood or a natural born child or like a legitimate prince or something like that. Whereas Loki might be, but because of his actions in slaying Harold, regardless of whether or not we're going to find out whether or not that was like there was a valid reason for why he did it or why he got blamed or something like that. We'll get to that eventually, I'm sure. But it is kind of this thing where it's like, if you're not exactly, if there were another prince ahead of Loki in this line of succession, wouldn't it make sense for them to be the one that's in control, or have like the queen consort or something be at least like the reigning monarch for now until one of the other princes comes of age or is ready to take the throne or something like that? That just kind of seems like something that would be brought up eventually. And like Hyrudine said he wanted to become king of the giants, and that's why he wanted the Marimara no Mi way back at Dressrosa. That's why he was in the tournament. So that would imply that, like, well, if Hyrudine would have a legitimate claim to the throne, then wouldn't it make sense for if his father died and he was the eldest child, that's a legitimate child, wouldn't he be able to, like, claim the right to the throne? Or maybe there's some other type of a thing when it comes to the way that the giants determine who the next king or the next queen is. Maybe there is something to do with, like, strength or something. Where one of the movies that I really like, it's called Stardust, and someday I might end up doing a review of it. I don't know. It is kind of like romantic adventure and stuff like that, and the royal family in it. Their tradition is that the king tends to have a bunch of sons, and then whichever son manages to kill the other sons is the one that then becomes king. Who's like the last remaining son becomes king. That doesn't seem like a very wholesome way of determining who's going to be king, but there's, there might be something here when it comes to like, the giants, where it's just like the strongest one that can prove themselves will be the next one that's king out of like, his siblings, out of all of his children. And Loki dishonorably did something, so now they don't want him as king, which is fair. I wouldn't necessarily want like someone who slayed their own father as the king anyway, unless like their father was already a horrible king and they slayed him and was actually better at it, which is like one of the theories that was going to happen in Game of Thrones or something like that. And then we get to, we get like a more wide shot where we see some more of the school area, which again, just like the library itself, is like built into and around the tree, which is pretty cool. These different, branches and limbs of the tree. And Ripley is continuing. She's like, that brings today's history lesson to a close. Everybody show these guys around the school. And they're like, yes, ma'am. Okie dokie. So they're just really happy. And Ripley keeps talking to Luffy, and she's like, hey, Mr. Captain, you look different from that all-white look you had before. What's the deal? I was looking forward to seeing you like that. So this is, the giants are, Dory and Broggy reference this, that like, oh, you look like one of our warriors from the past. They didn't specifically say Joy Boy, but they said you look like our sun god or something like that. They mentioned something like that when they interacted with Luffy on Egghead when they first arrived there, when they first reunited with Luffy. And Luffy's smiling, he's like, oh, that's me at my freest. So he's just like, yeah, that's me at my freest. And Ripley explains, she's like, you resembled a legendary warrior from the old fables of Elbath. And Luffy's like, oh. So Luffy is at least like, he's slowly getting like the cookie crumbs fed to him. Not that Luffy would ever leave crumbs, but he's slowly getting like the trail of breadcrumbs leading him to like being told like about Nika now, and Joy Boy by extension. Now, I do not think that Luffy is necessarily super interested in finding out what this means, but it might be something where like Robin or Nami or one of the others might be like, hey, you were mentioning something to Luffy earlier about like a warrior in white, and Vegapunk mentioned something similar. What would that, what can you tell us about that? And then like it would be nice if like Ripley or one of the others, like Gert or something like that, like told the Straw Hats and such about what she meant by that, like about Nika and maybe about Joy Boy type of a thing. And Robin would be like, Joy Boy? I know that name. He's the one that wrote the apology letter to the Mermaid Princess way back at Fishman Island, and then like, get some more information that way. That would be like a good way of like kind of not necessarily giving us like, it gives us a bit more information about like what the giants know about Joy Boy and about Nika, but it doesn't necessarily fill in a huge number of gaps. It might necessarily give us more questions, but at least gives us a little bit more information in that regard for like how the giants view Nika and everything. And I think one of the little girls is just like, because one of the little girls is like holding Usopp up and she has a little heart above her head, and one of the other little girls, who is just adorable, has like this giant helmet on, is like trying to get Luffy, and she's like, it made my heart skip a beat. I'm from the last generation of Elbath warriors after all. Or maybe it's that might have just been Ripley saying that, which is kind of cute because she's just like, maybe she's like Gerd and she kind of likes humans a little bit, but she's like, I'm from the last generation of Elbath's warriors after all. So, and like Gerd is stated to be a doctor. Not that it's like unheard of for like the giants to have a doctor or something like that. I'm sure the giants have had to have doctors over the centuries and everything else like that. It's not like people never get hurt on Elbath. And if you're part of a society of warriors where people are fighting and training a bunch, you're going to have people who get injured, who get cuts on their arms, scrapes, broken limbs, broken, stuff like that, where they have to have a doctor come and treat them. Unless there's like something on Elbath that helps a lot with that healing factor, which might be something very useful to have. And that might be like something where it's just like the giants are more used to not being worried about being hurt as much while they're on Elbath. But if they leave Elbath, that gets a lot worse of a problem. That may not necessarily factor into the warning from Louis Arnault in the last chapter, but it might be something, or in the one of the other chapters. But it is something that could be like a thing to be aware of. That being here, you might get used to your wounds or something healing faster than they normally would out in outside of Elbath, and that might be a little bit of we got to be careful with this. If we get too used to that, it's not going to be as easy for us to adjust again once we get off the island and head back out into the world, type of a thing. Also, one of the things, of course, that we saw on Dressrosa was, of course, when Hyrudine fought Magnify, he just got beat to all heck. In regards to Magnify just slamming into him, and making himself so heavy with his ton fruit and everything that it just made, it was just so brutal on Hyrudine. And then Hyrudine was able to get back up again because of Moncherie with her using her heal fruit, but still, there's that. And now we're going to cut over to where we have the library. And so it's we see the school on one area, and then we have the library, and there's little a lake stream thing going there that's probably feeding out into the lake that we had over there. And there's a bridge going up and up to the library. And we have Saul talking, he's so you've pretty much already heard so you pretty much already heard. As in, I think he's referring to what Vegapunk told Robin and the others when he was on when they were on Egghead. And I'm assuming it's Robin saying it came up when we were trying to escape Egghead alive. That's how we ended up here. For them all talking. And so the ones going into the library are Robin, Chopper, I think it's Bonnie and Lilith, I think, are the other two that are going in there. Yeah, Bonnie and Lilith that are going in there with Saul as he's leading them inside. Still got a ways to go in the chapter, and I'm not even finished, and this is already over, or about an hour long for a recording. So Saul gets them inside, and he is, he's taking them to the door, and he's just how I couldn't, how I couldn't stop worrying about those books after seeing all the scholars dying to save them. That's why I went back to Ohara with Hyrudine and the others. I was overcome with tears when I saw how many of them survived, each one a tiny spark of hope. So again, this whole thing calling back to the the scholars of Ohara. When the library is burning, they're grabbing these books and throwing them out of the windows of the building and into the lake, because it's they have more of a chance of surviving in the lake, this freshwater lake that looks clean and pristine and everything like that. They have more of a chance of being, of surviving, of not being just completely destroyed down in this lake than they do being inside of the freaking burning tree. So, or being, possibly taken by the government or something like that. And, so it's they just get thrown into the lake. And that was something that, I think I called back to. I remember, I think it was a little while before we found out that Saul was alive. I think I did a video where I talked about just, how freaking awesome the archaeologists on Ohara were for what they managed to achieve. And then, they threw all of the books out of the building and everything else like that. There had to be something there that resulted in, those books had to end up somewhere. I was right. They ended up here. And Saul's explaining, he's now, Robin, be careful. Watch what happens to that book you're holding as you enter. And Robin's holding a book that says archaeology on it, which is pretty spot on for her. And she's walking in, and then the book just gets huge. And it just falls onto the ground, and Robin falls to her knees as she's looking at it. And I think Chopper is just shocked by this as well, and he falls to his knees as he's looking at it. And we get this great kind of inside shot of the library where we pan up, and there's an owl sitting on top of one of the branches there with a chair next to it, which is great, so you can sit and read to the owl. And then there's all of these shelves and everything filled with the books. And of course, these books are now giant size, as in the giants can open them up and read them without having to like squint or something. When I was reading through the spoilers for the chapter, they had said something about like the it has a way to like make books bigger. And what I was originally thinking was like basically like like a magnifying glass, where you take the book and you put it into the magnifying glass, and you can do that. Or there's like e-readers or stuff like that people who are hard of hearing or vision impaired and stuff like that they can get to, you know, make the writing bigger, so they can then like, you know, read it on a screen, and then like, you know, move the screen, or, you know, move the book and turn the pages and everything else like that, so they can read it easier. That was the initial thing that I was thinking of. The book literally just growing into a bigger book is not necessarily what I was anticipating, but I like it either way. So that's good. And Saul just starts laughing. He is just like, feast your eyes. Isn't it amazing? All these books, giant size. It's marvelous, don't you think? And he's just like spreading his arms wide, pointing this out. And like, Robin is having this moment here where she is like having a bell being given the library by Beast in the movie, where she like goes in, or like she's going into the library and she doesn't know what's happening, and then like the Beast like opens all the shades and she opens her eyes and looks around at like all of the books all around her. That moment there, Robin is probably having something similar to that right here, because you cannot tell me Robin would not love reading every single freaking book in the Beast library in Disney's Beauty and the Beast. She would love it. She would just be happy with that for a while until she finished all of the books. But like all of these books are just all over the place, and we know that there's not just the books from O'Hara here. There's probably other books from Elbath, some of which may predate the Void Century, or be concurrent with the Void Century in this library. And he's like, any book you bring in here gets gigantified. Welcome to the mysterious Owl Library. All the books we rescued from O'Hara 22 years ago can be found here. We made sure not to miss any of them, not a single one. And this is, of course, calling back to the flashback that we saw with Vegapunk, where we saw Gerd and Hyrule and Goldberg helping get the books out of the lake. Now, it said, Saul said that he had Hyrule, he had Hyrule and his friends come and help with getting the books. So that still doesn't explain how Saul met Hyrule and his crew. Now, 22 years ago, there was a very high possibility that maybe Hyrule and his crew were out doing something, and they were in the West Blue, and either maybe they heard about something that happened with O'Hara, and maybe they were somewhat aware of O'Hara, and they went to check it out, and they found Saul. In regards to, like, either they found him in the ocean, and they saved him, and, like, Gerd's a doctor, so Gerd would have been able to, like, treat Saul's wounds and everything else like that. Maybe she's the reason. I was like, his wounds are pretty, his scarring's pretty bad, but she's maybe, like, in the flashback, we saw him all bandaged up and everything else like that, so maybe she's the one who did that. Or maybe it was somehow Saul decided, he's like, okay, well, I got to do something to save those books. And he goes and, like, maybe either he finds his way to Elbath and he, it's like, hey, beseeches upon them. And maybe King Harold is just like, yes, go. I will send some of our young warriors with you to help get the books. And he sends Hyrule and his crew to go with them. Now, we did not see Road in that flashback, but it could have been Road was like, fine, I'll take you there, but I'm not helping with the books, and he's just sitting on the ship pouting or something like that because he's a prick and a pervert, and definitely deserves being strung up the way that he is right now. For what he did. And then, like, Robin is having this other little flashback where she's, like, looking up at everything around her, and she is remembering when she was a little kid, finding her way to the library for, like, the first time, possibly after Olvia left, and she meets Clover, and he's like, this is the world's greatest library. Do you like books? And it's, it's that callback to, like, take, these books, books are the greatest weapons in the world type of a thing. And everything. And Saul is just like, never thought I'd have the privilege of showing you this. And Robin's just looking up, and it's like she is just overcome with this. And like we see the panel with like her, just like the tears are starting to form in her eyes, because it is this. It's like she was just so over. She would have been freaking happy enough if just Saul was still alive. And like, even if, she would have been sad that like all the books had been lost, but she was kind of under the impression that they had been lost anyway. And she was under the impression that Saul was dead. And then she finds out, like, not even like a few days ago, that Saul is alive. Like probably less than a week ago or something like that Saul is alive from Vegapunk. And now she's here and she's reunited with Saul. And then on top of that, not like 5 minutes later, it is being revealed to her that not only is Saul alive, but the archaeologists managed to throw so many of these books out of the building, and then thanks to Hyrudine, we managed to salvage all of them and bring them here. And now they are here in this library for the giants to read, and now you can read them too. And Saul has probably worked his way through a good chunk of them, and probably Agni and Ripley have probably read through a good chunk of them as well. King Harold may have read a good chunk of them. Gerd probably did. Hyrudine may have as well. Maybe Loki did. We don't know. That was 22 years ago, 21 and a half-ish, 20 years ago, 21 and a half-ish years ago, and all of this would have started. And so it's just like, Robin is just overwhelmed by the fact that it's like, as Saul said, it's like these were little sparks of hope. These books were little sparks of hope. And it is this reminder of like everything that O'Hara built up in its knowledge isn't gone. And it's not gone because Robin's still around. It's not gone because of Saul's actions and because the actions of the archaeologists of Olvia and Clover and of so many of the others who sacrificed their lives throwing those books out of the windows and into the lake. It meant that it wasn't a futile effort, which just makes it so freaking awesome and just adds to how freaking badass those guys were. Even if they weren't necessarily super strong, they were very strong when it came to their convictions. So I love that. Okay, back to the realm of the dead, or the underworld area of Elbath. Cutting back down, and we're hearing, so Loki is having a conversation with someone, and this person is going to get named pretty quickly. Their name is Mosa. We do not know if Mosa is male or female, but their name is Mosa. Definitely by the time we get to this in the anime, it'll probably be pretty quickly revealed whether or not Mosa is male or female, because by then we'll definitely know one way or the other. But then again, Im has talked in the anime, and we still don't know what their freaking gender is, nor the name of their actor, so we'll see what happens there. So Loki is like, I guess you've also got nothing but free time, huh? And the Denden Mushi is there, and it's just like, I'm sorry, am I disturbing you? And that's Mosa is on the other end. And he's like, nah, I welcome a good disturbance. I have nothing to do but kill time. For Loki just sitting there with like the chains tying him to the tree. And he's like, so that moment of true fear you mentioned before, is that still what motivates you? It's like, yes. Even now when I think about it, I can't stop the trembling. And we're getting a slight variation of a transponder snail. It is a snow transponder snail. And given the size that this thing looks to be in comparison to Loki, this is not your average Denden Mushi. This is like the giant sized ones. It's like, because throughout the course of the series, we've seen like, so that they have like the little ones, the little, mini ones that have like the black Denden Mushi on their wrists. They have like the more mini transponder ones, and then they have like the more general ones that like, like the Straw Hats have one on their ship, and like Law and such have them, and for communication purposes. And then there's like the bigger ones that are more like the visual transponder snails, and this one seems to be like possibly even bigger than those. And it's just like a voice recognition and cold transit type. So this is a snail that is designed specifically, or it evolved specifically to be able to be in the snow and in the cold. So that's kind of cool. And Loki's like, ditto. It's so frustrating. We've been friends for a long time, but for one reason or another, we've never actually met face to face. And Loki's like, if I were there in your stead, I've had turned that place into a ruin and slaughtered the lot of them. And Mosa's like, I don't want that. And Loki's like, for a noble soul, you're so naive, Mosa. And then we have the little additional here where it's just like about Mosa. It's like in Japanese, he uses the suffix something for Mosa, which implies Mosa might be some kind of noble, duke, or official with a high respectable status. Depending more on context, we're keeping it vague, is what it says for like the editor's note, which is fair since we don't know the exact context of like who he's talking to yet. Mosa don't know if it's male or female, don't know what their position is in the setup, and Loki's like, you've got to stomp them out without mercy. Only a fool gives their enemy a chance to get payback. And Mosa's just like, thank you for your counsel. Loki, what? And it's just like, and Mosa continues, you use harsh words, but there's a streak of kindness beneath the surface. I've noticed that more and more recently. And Loki is just shouting because he doesn't like the fact that someone said he was kind. And he's just like, hey, you're giving me the creeps. Don't do that again, or you'll regret it. That kind of crap won't fly. Kindness, never say that to me again. And then Mosa is just like, please, can you not shout? And Loki's just like, shut up, Mosa. Just you wait till I'm no longer shackled. So, we know a few things about Mosa. They've been friends with Loki for a while. They've never met him in real life. And somehow Mosa went through some type of a very traumatic event. Disturbing and traumatic event at some point in time. Big question. When? And what was it? Things we don't know yet, things we'll find out about. There's so many possibilities here. There could be Mosa had been a child when everything happened with Lin 66 years ago, and may have memories of that. Could have been something else that happened. A lot could have happened on Elbath in that time frame. Other pirates could have possibly showed up and tried to attack them, or other... someone else could have tried to do something stupid. Could have been, Mosa may not even be a giant. Mosa might be, because it's like your voice wouldn't sound necessarily any different or not if you're a giant talking over a Denden Mushi. So Mosa could be a human or something else like that, had something there. We're going to get a possible celestial dragon showing up here in a moment. We'll find out. And it could be that Mosa had been a slave to the celestial dragons and had to go through some of that torment and everything, similar to like what Struyson had to go through. And then maybe either managed to escape because of stuff that like Fisher Tiger did, or something else happened. And now just somehow Mosa is in this, communicated, voice only, friendship, relationship, whatever, with Loki. And we don't know anything about that yet. We'll find out. Now we cut to the Western Village. We cut to this last double page spread. And first we have that it's just like the giants are like all in the village waiting because it's like they don't want to quite start celebrating until the Straw Hats get back with Saul and everything. So they're just like, hey, wasn't the feast delayed? Or it's like, we're just drinking while we wait. You're having way too much. So it's probably, them. And then we cut to, we see the castle up. That's kind of like the, I think it's supposed to be like the real life full size version of like the Big Stein Castle or the Sun Castle or something like that had been in Rhodes' diorama. And we see like this black lightning come from the sky and hit the castle, hit the, courtyard area of the castle. And Dorian, Broggy's there, and we've got like another giant there, and they're just like toasting and everything. And then we cut into like the courtyard area of the castle, and we see these two figures. They're both hooded and cloaked, and they land there, and we see that the symbol is the very similar symbol to what the Gorosale had when they appeared at at Egghead. The circle with the star in it and the points around it. There's no number in the middle of this one. Saturn was 5, and then the other ones had other corresponding numbers. I don't remember which ones were which. I think Jupiter was 1, but I don't remember any of the other ones after that, for like what other corresponding number they had for 1, 2, 3, and 4. But Saturn was 5, and then now this one shows up, and it doesn't have a number in the middle. And we have these 2 hooded and cloaked figures, one of which looks like Shanks, and it looks to either be possibly Shanks, since we don't see the other side of his face, but it's most likely that Shanks look-alike that we're kind of assuming has to exist because of Shanks' connections to the Celestial Dragons, because of the Figarland family, because of Garling and everything. And this could be that whole thing of like Shanks' evil brother or Shanks' evil cousin or whatever the case may be that we have here for this whatever other Shanks character that looks exactly like Shanks. Even has the same like kind of mustache, starting to show up and everything. The same 5 o'clock shadow. And it looks very much like the Shanks that had been the one that went and talked to the Gorosei way back during the Reverie. Looks very much like that Shanks. Could be that Shanks. We don't know. We will have to wait and find out. There is the whole thing of the fact that there's the Shanks look-alike, and because a lot of people like to point it out, yes, there's a very high resemblance between Shanks from One Piece and Gildarts from Fairy Tail, which is not a bad thing. That's fine. Redheaded characters are nothing new. Go look at Harry Potter. There's a whole family of them if you want to bring the Weasleys in. And all of that. And then there's another figure there that is also cloaked and hooded and seems to have bandages wrapped all the way around their face except for like below their, except for around their eyes. Just given the way that they're kind of drawn, kind of looks like maybe a female. Maybe just for the way that the face is, but maybe not. And like the authors notice, intruders appear in a flash. So, the knights, maybe, probably the royal knights or whatever they were called, are probably what's just popped up here. So we'll see what happens there. I don't know. The Holy Knights, that's what they were. We'll see how that goes. So it doesn't say anything about a break next week. As I said, I think Shonen Jump is on break next week, but I don't know if that means they're still going to be on One Piece chapter or what. It all depends on like when the leak happens. If not, just because of everything with Christmas and everything, I don't know if I'll have another video up next week. And besides the Royals and Leaders one that'll be up on Monday, and then I'll have the if there is one next week, later in the week after Christmas, if there's a chapter review, then I'll do that. But other than that, I may not have another one up just because I've got so much other stuff going on with family stuff and Christmas and everything this weekend and that weekend and everything. So we'll see how that goes. So that's what I have. There will be at least one other video that goes up before Christmas, and that one's going to go up that goes up before the end of the year, and that one will go up the week of New Year's. And that one's just like I had like a fun idea for a video involving Lilo and Stitch and Devil Fruits. So that's what I did there. That'll be like just like the last little video that'll go up for the year. So I hope you all enjoy that. I hope you have a happy and a healthy and a safe holiday season. If that's spending time with family, I hope you enjoy that. Spending time with friends, also good. If that's just taking some time for you and relaxing at home, also awesome. So I thank you very much, and I hope you all have a nice rest of your day. Bye.